What is up, everyone? Weaver1246 here, and I'm here to tell you today about a game that I have just beaten almost 3 months in the making, 83 hours, over 350 parts, and the game that I'm talking about is Skyrim. The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. So, what is The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim? Well, unless you've been living under a rock, you probably already know the answer to this question, but Skyrim is the 5th installment in the Elder Scrolls series, and you play the part of what they call the Dragonborn. You are part of a line of heroes that have dragon blood in them, and Skyrim has been plagued by the return of dragons, which have been extinct for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And all of a sudden these dragons start returning, and it is your job as Dragonborn, your destiny, to defeat these dragons and find out why they are returning in the first place. I won't give away too much of the plot, but pretty much that's the game in a nutshell. And now I'd like to go into the pros and cons of this game. What I liked, what I didn't like. First of all, the one thing that I really wanted to talk about is just the style of this game. Skyrim is a first-person or third-person, depending on your preference. There is a way to turn between the 2 points of view, but mostly a first-person RPG. And one thing about RPGs, especially anything made by Bethesda, is extremely customizable. One of the very first things you do in the game is you select a race and then completely customize your character any way you want. I mean, you can do everything from like your jaw width to your I don't know, color of your eyebrows. It's ridiculous how customized you can get in this game. When I got it and started customizing my character, I really didn't care too much. There was a few things I wanted to change, you know, hairstyle, hair color, but when it comes to jaw width and like how much your nose protrudes or whatever, I mean, it just doesn't matter at that point in time. Especially since, you know, towards the I mean, it didn't take long at all for me to start finding helmets and stuff like that, which hide my face anyway. Especially towards the end, when you get ebony armor and Daedric armor that will completely cover your face no matter what. So, I mean, you can customize your character if that's your kind of thing. You're going to love that part of this game. Another thing is that Skyrim, being as big of a world as it is, just, you can do whatever you want. There's nothing you can't do. It's kind of ridiculous to the point that, like, you can even go and slaughter an entire town. The game will let you do it, you know, if you can survive it. I mean, once you get up into higher levels and stuff like that, you're going to be able to do it if you wanted to, but you can literally go and kill everyone in a town, and the game will let you do it. Now, going off of that, you can also play the game any way you want. There is obviously a story quest for this game. It's going to take you maybe 8 to 10 hours to do the story by itself. But the thing that makes Skyrim really shine is the fact that there's so much more than just that. The game was advertised as having maybe, 300 hours of content. I don't think this game quite has 300 hours of content. However, my playthrough alone was 83 hours, and I didn't do everything. There's 4 guilds, throughout the entire world of Skyrim. It's the Thieves Guild, the College of Winterhold, which is like the Mages Guild. There's the Companions, which is the Fighters Guild in Skyrim, and then there's the Dark Brotherhood, which is the Guild of Assassins. And those are the 4 main guilds throughout the entire world, and you can do those. You can choose to go off and do side quests. There's several, like 100 side quests that you can do. Some of them are actually quests, some of them are actually just miscellaneous objectives, where it's not really a quest, but you can do it and get a fairly good gold reward, but you won't actually complete a quest by doing it. There's Thane quests, where you can go and become the Thane of a city, which pretty much is like the Jarl, they call them in this game, or the mayor of the town. Like to become their right-hand man almost. There's Daedric quests. Daedric quests are quests given to you by these Daedric lords or Daedric princes, either at their shrine, or they'll come and approach you at a different, in some other kind of way, and they'll give you a quest. Usually they're pretty long quests, pretty in-depth quests, and you complete them in some way or another, and you usually get something pretty good for your efforts. They call those things Daedric artifacts, and they're usually really valuable. For example, one of the ones that I went on to gave me Azura's Star, which is a refillable soul gem, which I used a lot because I had almost every single weapon I had was enchanted, and of course when you enchant a weapon it has charges and that they use up. My follower had a whole bunch of staffs that needed to be recharged from time to time, and so I used the Azura Star a lot for that. You also get some weapons, some pretty good weapons. I had the Mace with Molag Ball for a good portion of the game, at least half of it. I'd say that I had that thing, and that was a really good weapon as well, especially once you got it leveled up. As it is an RPG, there's also skills that you can upgrade, whether you want to or not, and it kind of depends on your fighting style. For example, you can at the very beginning of the game, after you leave the first city, you actually come upon these standing stones, and you pretty much choose your default fighting style right there. It gives you the warrior, the mage, or the thief. And so you can be a warrior and just be a tank and go and kill everything in your path using one-handed, two-handed weapons and such, using a shield, and pretty much just destroy everything in your path with just your own strength. You could be a mage, and there are several schools of magic to choose from. You can be a healer, so that you can heal yourself in battle and pretty much heal as you're being hit, so that you pretty much take no damage. You could be a destruction magic mage, so that you can have like a high-level destruction spell and just completely annihilate an enemy by shooting them once with like a huge fireball. You could also use things like illusion magic to change the world around you and make other people either run away from you or fear you. You could use alteration magic to change the world around you, make artificial light, open locks, stuff like that. I'm gonna miss some of them. There's conjuration magic, so that you can conjure different creatures, different Atronachs, maybe even Daedra to fight for you as well, and stuff like that. Or you could also become a thief, and instead of using your own might, either in magic or just one-handed combat or two-handed combat. You can actually use the shadows and sneak around and perform these quick killing sneak attacks by hiding in the shadows, becoming invisible. You can also use it to pickpocket and lockpick different treasure chests and people, and you can also move silently when you walk and are then unable to activate traps as you come across them. And throughout the game, I was mostly a warrior, and I used heavy armor and one-handed weapons to attack with. But towards the end of the game, I'm like, you know, I really want to start using some magic, or I want to start using sneak abilities so that I can't be seen at some parts of the game. So a lot of times you end up kind of a mixture of all three of them, but towards the beginning you pick your default class, and that's pretty much how you start with, but you usually end up being a mixture of all of them. I also want to go and talk about the graphics. The graphics were excellent in this game. I'd like to compare it to like Fallout New Vegas and Oblivion, you know, Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, which were probably the two newest RPGs in the same style. Both of them were made by Bethesda. So it was almost the same exact style of gameplay, but the graphics lacked in both of them. And I think that they made leaps and bounds since the last Elder Scrolls game in the graphics. I first noticed it right away at the very beginning when you're riding in the cart to go and be executed. And you're looking around and it's snowing, and the trees are filled with snow, and the snow is falling off the trees, and throughout the entire game you can see it all over the place. If you're walking through the fields and you look up into the night sky, and the moon's hanging there in the sky, and there's the aurora borealis, and the stars are just gleaming, especially if you're outside of a town and in the middle of nowhere. It's really beautiful. At the very end of the game, when you go into Sovngarde, it's the detail in the sky is just amazing, and it just the way it's designed is absolutely beautiful. And speaking of the expansiveness of the game, I can't think of a game where there's more to find. Hundreds and hundreds of locations. I mean, there's Nordic ruins, there's Dwarven ruins, you can find like dragon burial tombs, you can find like ancient underground cities, you can find oh god, there's a war raging in Skyrim, so you can find different camps of the two different factions that are fighting in Skyrim, and there are literally hundreds of locations to find. I didn't find anywhere near all of them, obviously. So that's another thing that you can do, is just go and explore these caves, and just, I mean, you don't even need a quest to do it. You just go find this cave and go in and just loot the hell out of it. Kill all the enemies inside and just take whatever you find. Sometimes you'll find some really good weapons, sometimes you'll find good armor, sometimes it'll be something completely unique. Every once in a while you'll come across what they call a dragon priest. And these dragon priests will drop a special mask, and all the masks have different properties, different effects when you wear them. And unfortunately, during my playthrough, and specifically, I actually sold one of these masks without knowing what it was, and I can't ever get it back again. And that really sucks, because there actually is a special quest to retrieve all, I think 9 of them, and then you can go and get a special final 10th mask when you get all other 9 of them. So I won't be able to do that quest, but it's not an achievement quest, so I don't think it's that big of a loss. The next thing I want to talk about is the way that leveling up works. And as you level up, so does everything around you. Which can be kind of annoying, which means, I mean, you can't level up and then expect to fight the same weak creatures that you've been fighting throughout the entire game and make it extremely easy. On the other hand, though, it also means that there's no grinding involved. You don't have to go off and just grind to level up because there's a certain enemy you can't fight or can't beat, because the environment and all the enemies around you will level to your level. So you'll never find a creature that's too hard for you to fight, with a couple exceptions. When you first start the game, you find, and you wander too far off the path, you find things like saber cats that, even at their lowest level, are pretty hard to defeat. You'll find giants, which, until you get really high up in level, can just hit you once and send you flying off into space with one hit. Dragons, for instance, are you end up fighting them pretty early in the game, and at first a lot of them are really hard, and again they level as well, so eventually you'll find harder dragons to fight even at higher levels that are challenging, but at the very beginning of the game, dragons are pretty hard no matter what. I'd also like to talk about the style of combat and the way fighting works in Skyrim. When Oblivion came out, it was pretty simple. You choose what you want to do. You know, either use a one-handed weapon with a shield, or use a two-handed weapon, or use magic. And you pretty much had no choice. You know, you had to choose one, and you couldn't choose anything else. In Skyrim, they actually fixed that. You still have the choice of using a two-handed weapon. You still have the choice of using a one-handed weapon and a shield, and you still have the choice of using magic. But what they added with this game is two-handed system, where if you use a two-handed sword, both of your hands are occupied. But if you choose to have a one-handed weapon, you can have a shield, or you can have like a magic spell. Or if you don't want to use weapons at all, you can actually have either two spells or one spell in each hand, or you can put the same spell in both hands and use dual casting to make a extremely powerful spell. And it just really makes the fighting more complex. You're able to do a lot more with what you're given. And for example, a lot of what I did for most of the game was I had a one-handed weapon in one hand, but I used a healing spell in the other, so that as I was fighting I could also heal myself, so that as I was taking damage I would be able to heal that damage. Towards the end of the game I wanted to use more destruction magic, and I wanted to level up my destruction magic. So I had a fireball spell in one hand and a sword in the other, and so I could cast these fireball spells at long range, and when the enemy finally got closer to me I just hit it with my sword. And I really enjoyed that about this game, that there was just so much more you could do. You didn't have to just choose between magic and weapons. You could use both at the same time if you wanted. So that was extremely good. Now, what did I not like about this game? Well, first thing that came across was the voice acting. Not necessarily the voice acting itself, but just the voices. there was probably a cast of maybe 50 people that worked on this game, but there's hundreds of people in Skyrim. So lots of times you'd come across a character that sounds the exact same as another character in the game. For example, there was in the Thieves Guild. The leader of the Thieves Guild, when you get there, his name is Mercer, and he ends up actually being the bad guy that you have to fight. But through doing the Thieves Guild, I got really used to hearing his voice and what he sounded like. And as I was walking around Skyrim, I heard that same voice everywhere. And I'm like, that sounds the exact same as Mercer. And there were other voices as well that were pretty obvious. Most of the orcs sounded exactly alike. A lot of the women had the same voice. I swear the two followers that I had sounded exactly the same. I had one at the very beginning that I used to fight with. She was another member of the Companions Guild, and I actually married her and then had her come and follow me, and she did end up dying. And so I ended up having to go and get another follower that this time was a magic user. And a very good one at that, and I actually had her until the end of the game. But I swear to God, they sounded almost exactly the same. So that was one thing that was bad. It didn't really take anything away from the gameplay. It's just something that bugged me. The next thing I want to talk about really did have some major implications in the game, and that was bugs. And when you have a game like this, you saw it in Fallout New Vegas. When you have a game that's so big that that there's hundreds of locations and hundreds of hours of gameplay, you're gonna have bugs. You're gonna have glitches. I remember one time when I was walking, and I actually ended up walking through this area of rocks. I was supposed to go up and over it, but I actually went right through this group of rocks. There was one bug where I was actually doing a mission, and the mission bugged out to the point where I was supposed to go back, meet the guy, find out he was dead, and the guards were supposed to arrest me. They never arrested me. They weren't hostile towards me, and I could never beat that quest. So that was another quest that I just couldn't do because the game bugged out. Other bugs were things like getting stuck. I'd end up walking off a ledge, because a lot of times I wouldn't use the actual pass and wind down this mountain. If I wanted to go down the mountain, I'd just go down the side of the mountain. But every once in a while I'd end up getting stuck in this area where I couldn't jump out because the game had a really weird thing about not letting you jump if you're on too steep of a slope. You couldn't jump. And so there were times where I would get stuck and I'd have to reload a additional, or like a previous save, and start over from whenever that was. I did like the fact that the game had 3 auto-saves, so if you really fucked up, you could go back 3 saves back if you really needed to. Let's see here. Other than that, the last thing I want to talk about that really annoyed me, the one thing that I really didn't like about the game was the followers. Now, I had a follower for most of the game, whether it was Rhea at the very beginning or Ilya towards the last 3/4 of the game. And although I had followers, just some of the things they did was really annoying. One thing that was really major for me was when I gave Ilya these staves, I couldn't tell her which one to equip. It wouldn't let you equip certain types of armor or certain items to your characters. They kind of chose it themselves. And for armor, if it was a high armor rating, that's the armor they would equip. And for weapons, who knows? They just kind of picked whatever the hell they wanted to. And the problem with that was Ilya would pick this staff of fireball that I gave her. And if there was a fight in town or something like that, for Riften, for example, had several occurrences where a thief would run through town, and you could help the guards go and kill this thief. And usually the follower would aid the guards in killing this thief. Well, the fireball spell itself has a range of effect. Like, you'll hit one spot, but the damage will like have like a 15-foot radius or something like that. And so the guards are fighting this thief, and Ilya shoots the thief with a fireball and hits all the guards. Well then, after the thief is dead, the guards will go and start attacking her, and she'll have to end up fighting them. And it was just a big mess, and it happened several times throughout the game. Towards the end of the game, I also had a horse called Shadowmere, and the horse was fighting an enemy, and she used that same fireball staff to fight the enemy as well, but it hit the horse, and then the horse started to attack her, and it happened so often that I had to continuously reload saves so that she wouldn't go apeshit and, you know, kill everyone in sight. Another thing was traps. When you go through a dungeon with your follower and you encounter traps, I don't know if they just missed this when they were programming the AI or what, but the followers would not avoid traps. They'd almost try to set them off. You know, whether it be a swinging blade trap or like a fire trap or these big logs that would, you know, fly out of the air and hit you in the face, and arrows and stuff like that, I could usually avoid by not stepping on the pressure plates, but they'd run down the stairs, if you know there were stairs there, and hit this pressure plate and set off the trap. A lot of times I wasn't far enough ahead of them where they'd set off the trap and I'd get hit by it as well. And I can't remember for sure because it was a long time ago, but I think Rhea actually ended up dying because she set off these traps. I think what they should have done is have, you know, smarter AI that would you know, learn not to set off these traps or follow your following your footsteps to avoid them. The other thing about followers was that they'd always end up getting lost. Like, if I went by an enemy that I didn't really want to fight, I'd just kind of run by it, but your followers get all gung-ho and they pull out all their weapons and they start fighting this one enemy while I'm running off. Well, then they get lost and then I can't find them. And, you know, I can always end up fast traveling to have them teleport right beside me, but every once in a while that didn't work. And so there were several times where I lost my follower and I had to go looking for them, and they'd end up being like in the last building that I exited, and they just never exited, you know. There is that. I kind of wish that they followed more of the Fallout New Vegas example, because the followers in Fallout New Vegas were extremely good. They'd usually be able to keep up with you. They'd usually end up fighting the enemies that you were fighting, but ignore other ones that you weren't fighting. Like, you'd have to, like, if there was an enemy that you attacked, they'd start attacking it as well, but if you ignored it, they would usually ignore it as well. And so, I don't know if they just couldn't do that with this game, didn't think it was necessary, but the followers were a big part of this game that were really helpful, but at sometimes also very frustrating to have along. So, who's going to enjoy a game like this? Well, if you were the kind of person that liked the Fallout games, if you are the kind of person that likes RPGs, you're going to like this game. If you're more of the first-person shooter type games where you run and gun, like Battlefield 3 or Modern Warfare 3, and you're more into the Call of Duty games with online multiplayer and stuff like that, this is not the game that you're going to want to play, because it's nothing like that. If you like to explore, if you like to just go off into dungeons and fight monsters and kill dragons, this is the game for you. So it caters to a wide variety of people, but mostly, if you like RPGs, you're going to like this one. So, all that being said, we finally get to my final word. And what do I say about this? I extremely enjoyed this game. It was probably one of the best games of the year. I mean, now it's 2012, but of 2011, probably one of the best games of the year. And I think it even won Game of the Year in several different award ceremonies, including the VGA Game Award, the Spike VGA Awards. So, all in all, with the bugs and stuff like that, I can't give it a perfect score because it's not a perfect game. I can't give it a 10, but I give The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim a 9.25. It was almost there. It was so close, but with all the different bugs, the game-breaking bugs that I found, with all the frustrations that I had with the followers, I can't give it a perfect score, but it definitely gets above a 9. So I'm giving Skyrim a 9.25, and that is my final word.